And we'll just wait for everyone to log on and start in just a minute.
What's her name again? Megan.
Megan Aurora, I think.
Megan Aurora. Sorry about that. Yeah. Go ahead.
I was just saying hello, everyone who's joined so far. We'll get started in just a moment, waiting for everyone to log on. What were you going to say, Ashley?
Yeah, I won't at this point. Thank you.
And well, people are still coming in, but we'll get started at least. So welcome everyone. Thank you for logging on and attending this afternoon's program. My name is Matt Schumann. I am on the programming team here at Cary Library. Before we begin, just a few things to note. Please let me know in the chat if you're having any technical difficulties that I can try to resolve. And if you have any questions or comments for the speakers, please use the Q&A button. This program was made possible by the generous donors to the Cary Library Foundation. I'd like to now introduce Ashley Rooney, the past president of the Lexington Field and Garden Club. And Ashley has been the host of our gardening series for the past almost 2 years now, and has brought innumerable gardening experts to the library to answer all of our questions. So now please welcome Ashley.
I'm so glad you're here today because we're going to get Terry again. And I'm sure if you're gardening, you're getting all those garden catalogs just like I am. And there's so many choices out there. Terry's going to help us sort it out which one she really recommends. We start with H because we already did, if you missed the first part, A to G. I was doing my alphabet backwards there. And so you can see that on the YouTube with the library. But this will be H. And if anybody can guess which is the first plant that starts with H, you win a second look at the whole thing. Okay, Terry, you're on.
Okay, here we go.
I have Cary Library in front of me. There you go.
I think it was just taking a second. Yep.
There we go. And the first plant is, did anybody guess it? Let's see. Nope. All set, Terry?
Okay, this is a hellebore, and hellebores are one of my favorite plants. And this one in particular is amazing. This one is called Fetidus, and it begins blooming in December. It blooms from December to May, and I know of no other plant in the zone that does that. It grows about 18 to 24 inches, and the flowers are green. I'm going to show you different hellebores. Oops, sorry. Okay, sorry, I'm just kind of getting acclimated here. This one is called Ivory Prince, and you can see it has a variegated foliage. Many hellebores do come with variegated foliage. Excuse me just one second. There we go. Okay. And this is the flower of the same plant after a month. So they do change colors. This one starts out cream with pink and then turns to a green. Another single hellebore with a beautiful center. And a double hellebore. Double hellebores are rather recent, within the past 10 years or so. They've been propagating them like crazy because of the variation in their beauty. Oops.
Oh, that's gorgeous.
Most of these have nodding flowers. They're, and this one here, I believe is called Spotted Lady. And the best way to display hellebores is to cut the flower off and float it in a dish of water. and it makes a fantastic centerpiece and lasts about a week. Moving on to Hemercalis, which is the daylily. If you grow plain orange daylilies, get rid of them all and start looking at hybrids. And I'm going to flip through many different colors here so you can see how much more attractive the hybrids are. And the way to get a good showing of them is to buy early bloomers, mid-season bloomers, and late season bloomers. And that way, throughout July and part of August, you'll have this fantastic display of daylilies.
I'll also add, they grow in the wet.
I'm sorry?
They grow in the wet. I have a lot of wet in my garden and they grow profusely there. So
And
if
they-
it's summer like this again, it's all right.
And they also grow in dry because I have a lot of dry conditions. So they're very easy to grow.
Yep. Very non-demanding
Totally.
and beautiful. Oh, that's gorgeous.
This one is called a spider lily, daylily. Okay, moving on to heuchera. I find that my heuchera are not long-lived. They seem to only last about 5 to 7 years. How about you, Ashley? Do you find them long-lived?
Yeah, but they don't grow very well for me.
Oh, okay. This is one plant that you can put in a container and keep in the container outdoors over the winter and it will come back.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, and hosta is the same thing.
So you have the beginning of your potted plant display.
Yes. So this heuchera has a purplish and silver tone. This one is called green spice. And these are the flowers of the heucheras.
And they like shade.
Yes, they won't grow in full hot sun. Most of them won't. So you can see there's a lot of variation in foliage and in the flower. And this is hibiscus, which is also my background today. And the hibiscus are in bloom right now. They're very late season blooming, and they also come up very late in the season. You may think you've lost them, but just wait a few more weeks and they pop out of the ground. And you can see this one here has a dark foliage. They come in all shades of whites, pinks, and different colors of foliage. And this is what I call a little bit of Hawaii in redding. The
Yeah.
flowers are about 8 to 10 inches in diameter. Just absolutely beautiful, outstanding, showy. Whoops, sorry. And when I was at the Cape this week, they're prolific down there. They must like the sandy, dry soil. And I've seen just huge bushes of the hibiscus. And this one is a double ruffled. Moving on to hosta. If you have any plain green hostas, my suggestion is getting rid of them and interplanting hostas with variety. This one is called Striptease. It was the hosta of the year a few years back. Very attractive with that little strip of white going through the center. This is another hosta. I believe this one is called Spilt Milk. Yes, it is. And this is one of my favorites. Unfortunately, I don't know the name of it. In real life, it's has more of a grayish overtone. It's very attractive. And you can see if you pull up one of your plain greens and put something in like this, you're going to have so much more interest in your garden. And they come in all sizes. This one happens to be a giant one with crinkled leaves.
And that's such a lovely one. Can we add here that the ones with yellow tones should be more in the sun, while the ones with the blue tones like the deeper shade?
Yes, yeah, I think that's generally the case, but I just put them where I have room, to be perfectly honest. And if they don't do well, I move them.
Oh, well, okay. They get so big on me that I don't want to move them too much. I'm usually
Yeah.
splitting and giving them to
Yeah.
friends.
So many people do not care for irises, but I love them. They bloom in June. And I think every garden should have some iris in it. And they're such dainty, beautiful things. And this is your standard German iris.
Ooh, what's that? That's gorgeous.
Yeah, I'll go back.
Okay, can we, Terry, can we also mention which are rabbit resistant as we talk?
The iris is a, yeah, thank you. The iris is a rabbit resistant. I've never had a rabbit eat a hoster or a hellebore. I've never had anything eat a hellebore.
No, I've never had anything eat a hellebore. Rabbits will eat a little hostas. So if you have a little tiny hosta, you might protect it with chicken wire. Once the leaves get kind of tough and old, rabbits aren't interested anymore.
Okay.
What is that? Is that one iris?
No, it's one iris plant, but there are several blooms.
Oh,
There's
good.
probably about 6 blooms on that.
Yeah. Groundhogs, oh, somebody here wrote, groundhogs eat hosta leaves. Thank you.
Oh, okay. This is, so let me look up the name here. Cristida, dwarf crested iris. This comes up very early in the spring, and it comes from a little bulb. Very nice plant. It blooms about the time of the crocus.
Yeah.
You know, I'm sorry that I keep clicking through these, but my mouse is just extra sensitive. And here we have the Siberian iris in different colors.
This lady says deer eat hostas too. Use chicken wire if you're planting expensive hostas then.
And this is the Japanese iris, which likes moisture. You can see it's a flatter form. Another coloring.
Yeah.
And one that with veins.
I have a bunch of those. They look like Monet paintings out there.
Yeah.
They're really lovely.
This is in my bog garden. And that's the Japanese iris. The 2 colors, the white one and then the purple one. And the bunnies like Liatris, especially when it's in the small form, when it's just coming up out of the garden. And this is one of the few plants that blooms from the top down rather than from the bottom up. Lyncus. This one is called, it's also called Maltese Cross.
Oh, okay.
And then Monada, which is the bee balm. And we have the standard red, but we also have different colors. This likes some shade. It's actually in the herb family. And you can use the foliage to dry it and use it for teas. And variety with purple. This particular plant is not too well known in the plant world, but it's fantastic. It's called Macdinia, and this is it in the early spring. And the foliage is very, very attractive, and it's this dense green. After the flowers go by, it begins turning red. And so this is also known as crimson. Let me just check my notes here. Crimson fans. And it stays this red and green until fall. And then the flowers have a slight berry on them. This plant is called Lepta.
Is it
and
small?
This is great if you have rocks or a wall, because it just flows over it. I'm sorry, it's Napata. And it's also known as cat mitt. And I find that the cats don't bother this particular plant. They like the real cat mitt. And this comes in different sizes. You can get the small one that is creeping, and you can get some that are as tall as 24 inches. The flowers are usually purple or pink, mostly purple. And this is a close-up of the flower of the nepeta. Okay, cactus in the zone. This is one of the few cactuses that will survive the winter. The flowers on it are absolutely fantastic, but they don't bloom for a very long period of time. But I like this plant. It comes back faithfully every year. And it's a showstopper because people say, is that a cactus growing in your garden? And yes, it is. And when it does bloom, it's like a double bonus. Peonies are terrific. They're a structural plant. They're very, very long lived. This one is a very, very old one. It's called Festiva maxima. And this particular plant has been flowering for over 60 years. I took it from my mother's garden. Then we have single varieties of peonies. People who do not want to get into staking the heavy double ones can use these single ones without much staking at all, or any staking. And what that means is, putting supports to hold the flower heads up. This is a white variety. And then we have semi-double, which also at times do not need staking. You just have to go trial and error to see what works for you. A coral variety. Again, another double. And these bloom in June, faithfully, every June. This is a tree peony, which is a little bit different. It is very short blooming. The flowers do not last very long at all. They do not last in water, but they're pretty. And it's nice to have one or two tree peonies. And this is an intersectional, which is a cross between a tree peony and a regular peony. These tend to be very expensive, but again, worth having and experimenting with. Now, moving on to the poppy. The poppy is very sprawling in the spring, but it's absolutely beautiful interwoven in June with your other flowers. The foliage gets ratty, but it dies right down to the ground. So in many cases, it's summer dormant, especially if you're not watering it. But it makes such a statement to see a plant with, 10, 15 of these blooms in the spring, very uplifting. And a close-up of the center of that particular peony.
Nice picture.
Yeah. This is a different type of poppy. This is a receding poppy. So it's a receding annual, but it comes back every year. So I think of it as a perennial because it never goes away. And another receding poppy just pops up everywhere. You can understand why they call it poppies. Penstemon, this one is Husker Red. This was a perennial of the year a number of years back. Very, very easy to grow. Will grow in sun, partial shade, and light shade. And it has a very interesting seed head after the flowers are gone, which you can spray and use in winter decorations. And the rabbits do not bother this, or the deer. Another variety of penstemon. And another variety. These are,
That's gorgeous.
these tend to like space around them. They like dry soil.
What's that called, that red one?
It might be Red Riding Hood, but I'm not sure.
Okay.
Moving on to phlox. They bloom in late summer. They're blooming now, and they started blooming in late July. And I think people think of phlox as pink with the dark center, but there are many other varieties in colorations, which I recommend because they're so showy in the garden. This is a purple, and then we have the coral with a hot pink eye. And this happens to be the eye, this little circle here. And another variety of purple, a bright violet. Okay, and this is platycodon, or known as balloon flower. Platycodons come in pink, white, and blue, and variations, and I'll show you some of those. This platycodon has been in bloom for 4 weeks, and it was so prolific this year. It was amazing to see this big bush of blue. This is a double variety, and here we have white veined with purple. Moving on to
Solomon seal.
polygonatum, which is Solomon seal. This particular variety is about 3 feet tall, and it has this row of bells on it in the spring, in early spring. And it comes in many different varieties. This one here is tinged with a soft cream, and it has a red stem. This one has more variegation on it than the previous one. So again, you can get the Solomon seal in different variations of foliage.
Terry,
Yep.
let's add also that they go in the shade and they make a beautiful mix with hosta and ferns. And
Yes,
they're pretty.
yes,
And
thank
they're
you.
very nice. They're easy to plant. They're like it's like a ginger root.
Yes. And also another advantage of the Solomon seal, they will grow underneath trees. If you have a spot that nothing grows, usually the Solomon seal will do well.
Good point. That's right.
Primroses need moisture year round. They're good for boggy areas. And to show you different varieties of them. I've had this one for about 15 years, comes back beautifully every year. This is Crimson Fans. I recently lost this, so I just bought a new one a few weeks ago. And you can see how they grow in the bog garden, the sharp pink one and the white one with the crimson. I'm sorry, it's Miller's Red. Pulmonaria reminds me a little bit of hosta, where you get many different variations on green with cream on the leaves. These are extremely early bloomers. These even bloom before the crocus, and they bloom, as you can see, with multiple colors on one flower stem. So here we have pink, purple, and mauve. Another variation on the foliage of the pulmonaria. Okay.
And Terry, we have a question here.
Sure.
How do you manage mildew on phlox?
I buy them I make sure they're resistant, mildew resistant, and that helps a lot. The old-fashioned phlox, if you had any bit of humidity, they would immediately get a ton of mildew on them, but the ones that are sold as being resistant stand up a lot better. And if they do get mildewed, I just let them be, because the next year is another year. I don't go out spraying them or trying to correct it, or I just live with it for that season.
Yeah, I do too. Another question is, are liatris native, and do you recommend a specific variety?
They are native, and no, I don't recommend a specific variety.
And I think they're very good. They're pollinator happy. And
Yes, they are. Yes, very much so.
so it's a good thing to plant.
Yes. And they are planted from a tiny bulb, actually.
Oh,
So you can, in the springtime, you can find at the box stores sometimes bags of them.
oh, interesting.
This
So,
is for Jersey, which has dramatic foliage. It comes in many different varieties. The close-up of one with quite a bit of bronze in it.
you like shade.
It likes shade and it does well with moisture. And this looks like, to me, like praying hands, but it's a Rogersia just beginning to emerge. And here's one of the flowers, which is pinkish,
Oh, that's
and
pretty.
another variety, which is white. And these sprays of flowers end up having tiny berries after they're passed. This is sanguinea, which is known as bloodroot. It grows in woodland areas. It grows in a mixture of hot shade to shade. And it is summer dormant. It's very lovely in the spring, spreads everywhere. Very easy to pull up. And this is a treasure of mine. This is a double bloodroot. They're not common and hard to find. So I love this one. This one behaves differently. It kind of stays in a clump and doesn't disperse seeds. Moving on to sedums. Sedums are great for sunny spots. They'll take a little bit of shade, but not too much. And I particularly like the ones that cascade. They work well over rocks or edge of borders. And this one is, I love, with the jade green, with the pink exterior and the pink stems. There are so many varieties of sedums now. This happens to be a one that's crawling over my rock wall with yellow flowers. And here we have your standard autumn joy in the background with the pink. And we have this white one. Let's see if I wrote the name down. No, I'm sorry, the name escapes me, but it's green and white with white flower. Again,
Sandy Macy says, one of our participants, the rabbits love her sedum. Now, I have not had problems with rabbits.
I never had a rabbit eat a sedum ever.
Maybe they have other things to eat.
Yeah. And there's a lot of variation in the flower when it begins. Even the green is pretty with a bit of pink, and then it will turn pinker, and then it will turn rust. The bees love them. Love the flowers. Another variety of sedum. And this one here, at the top of these stems here, they already had one blooming, and here's the second blooming beginning at the bottom. So even interesting in how they grow. And here we have mahogany foliage. And of course, your hens and chickens, which practically grow on no soil, in poor soil. And this is solidago, which is a goldenrod. And it's a misnomer that goldenrods cause hay fever. They do not. And the hybrids are really lovely. I love the way this one just cascades and falls over. And of course, being a goldenrod, it likes sun.
And they're big pollinator friendly plants.
Yes. This is a stockies or betony. Very easy care plant that I don't know why more people don't grow them. They come in different heights. They're pinks and purples. The long blooming, absolutely no care, no trouble. Faithful, come back every year. Oops. And next is meadow rue or phylacterum. And this particular one has a low foliage base with flowers atop, about 5-foot stems, very delicate, very pretty. This is a pink puff one and a purple puff one.
What do
These
you-
like
You think it
some
likes
shade,
some shade? Okay.
yeah, and they can take moisture as well.
Yeah.
This is Terry Hale, which is a cross between, no, I'm sorry, this is Terry Hale. And it's also known as foam flower because it has these foamy flowers in the spring. And the Terry Hale also has very interesting foliage, and the foliage after the flowers are gone can really be a highlight in your garden. The foliage is low, usually no more than 6 to 10 inches. Trillium is very easy, comes back every year, spreads nicely through the garden, blooms very early in the spring. This is red, white, and spotted lady.
Oh, pretty.
Verbascum likes dry, doesn't like wet feet. This is violetta. And here we have flush of white.
Hmm.
And this one is very prolific. This is called Jackie. It's a mauve. It's very vigorous. And if you have the right conditions, it's a lovely, lovely plant. These bloom mid-May. This is a different type of verbascum. This is Shaxai. I'm sorry if I mispronounced that. And it grows very vigorously. It blooms for a very long period of time with these bursts of bright yellow flowers. Veronicas, your standard Veronica blue. This one is Veronica May night, I believe, very early spring bloomer. And this one is Mrs. Holt. This plant here is no more than 3 inches tall, right on the edge of a border, very colorful and dainty. And this is a ground cover Veronica. You need room for this because it will spread, but if you have an area that you do want in the shade that you do want that fill in, the Veronica is good. Okay, so that kind of takes care of the perennials, and I just have just a few bulbs that I want to show you that are also excellent perennials. This is snowdrops. These stop blooming while there's still no snow on the ground, usually in March. And they do tend to spread and clump, and they're just delightful to see because nothing else is in bloom at the time that they're blooming. This is Camassia, which is also known as Indian hyacinth.
Mm-hmm.
Very showy, very easy care. They will clump, and they bloom after the tulips and the daffodils are done blooming. So it's a nice bright color right in between that period before you get that June flush of flowers and the end of the spring blooming bulbs. So they sometimes call this the bridge bulb, which means it bridges the 2 seasons. I think everyone should grow these.
Do you think it's for sun or for shade? I had problems growing that originally.
Yeah, I think they like pot shade. I think that's where they grow best. I think if they have too much shade, they don't grow well, and if they have too much sun, they don't grow well.
Okay, so it's in between.
I mean, that's what that's been my experience.
Well, I agree. That's what I finally ended up with. And I agree. Once they bloom, they're gorgeous.
Yeah.
Just getting them to bloom.
And of course, crocus. So easy, so pretty, summer dormant. And then daffodils, nothing bothers daffodils. I believe they're slightly toxic. So the deer, the bunnies, nothing will bother a daffodil. And I find that you don't never have to divide them, just let them grow. And lastly, I think it's lastly, species tulips. And these tulips are usually short, anywhere from 6 to 10 inches tall. They mat, they come back every year. They're not the big showy ones, but they're delightful, and they come in different colors. And that's it.
Ah, congratulations from A to Z.
Right.
A lot there. Now I would add, tulips do get eaten. So what I've discovered is I put tulips in a circle of daffodils. So the daffodils are protecting
That's a
them.
good
The
idea.
rabbits don't like the smell of daffodils, which smell kind of oniony. But it's better to plant your bulbs in clumps and not in a long line. So you don't want a line of daffodils or a line of tulips. Do it in clumps.
Mhm.
It's much prettier that way.
Yeah.
Um,
I find the shorter tulips don't get bothered by the deer, because I don't think they bend down that far to eat them.
They probably don't. They are very short, those short tulips.
Yes.
Now, one attendee wants to know, do you cut back your daylilies? I deadhead them. I don't cut them back until maybe late fall.
Yes, I do the same. I think the foliage, the dying foliage, goes back into the root system and creates a healthier, better plant. And if you cut the foliage off, you're denying the roots that food.
Right. It's the same thing with the daffodils and tulips, if you want to
Yes.
reach that business.
Yes.
You keep that foliage until it has had it. So you try to, when you plant those things, you want something else that's going to maybe grow up in front of it, because you're not going to like the ugly foliage at the end. Maybe camassia would be another way. Are there any other questions before you hit those gardening catalogs? Oh, yep, I just see one popped up. Is there a particular monarda that you recommend? Oh, that attracts hummingbirds.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear you.
Is there a particular monarda that attracts hummingbirds? A red monarda would be one.
Yeah, but I think the hummingbirds tend to go to bright pink and reds.
Yeah, that's what they
And
go.
same with monarda.
Yeah, so you try to do those. To go back to the rabbits eating her sedum, she wants suggestions. She actually watched the rabbits doing it. Other than getting a cat, you might want to put your sedum in a chicken wire cage or something of the sort if the rabbits are really eating it, would be my suggestion. Terry?
Yeah, I'm sorry. I still didn't hear that. Something about
The rabbits are, she's worried about, she has seen the rabbits eating her sedum. So he wants to know what to do about it. So I suggested chicken wire around the sedum.
yes.
He gets a cat, an outdoor cat.
Yeah. Or a mesh wastebasket you can put over it. Or, sometimes if you plant enough of something, they're satisfied just taking a bit of it and not wiping the whole thing out. So if you like sedum, try planting a large bed of it and sharing it with the, rabbits. I just can't imagine that they would go through that much sedum.
Well, she's right. I've had one eat some of my sedum, but also when the leaves get bigger and tougher, rabbits like nice little tender, juicy little bits.
Yes. I find with a lot of plants, if you protect them as they're coming out of the ground, they'll be fine once they start maturing. And you can take off that protection and the rabbits won't go to them.
Okay.
Like you said, they like the tender, juicy.
Yeah, tender, juicy. Now, a couple more questions. Is the verbascum that you highlighted invasive?
No, No, it isn't. The check's eye, which is the yellow one, will recede, but it's not invasive because you can easily dig it up and pull it out. Or if you don't want more verbascum plants, you can cut off the seed head. But the violetta and the flush of white and the Jackie, those do not spread that much. They spread enough that you get a plant here or there every season.
Yeah. Yeah, they were very pretty. I don't grow those.
Yeah.
And somebody wants to know, do you grow roses?
I grow, I don't grow tea roses, but I do grow old-fashioned roses that I bought a long time ago that grow on their own rootstock. And I also grow easy care roses like carpet roses and knockout roses.
And I grow roses too, though my husband does most of the work with them. Do you have a question to do with the roses, or you were just wondering if we grew them? Okay, no response on that one. Okay. So, and what is my time? What is our time? We have 10 more minutes, but if there are not any more questions, and since Terry has been our speaker for 3 times, we really owe her a great applause. You see why the Lexington Field and Garden Club is so good to have people like Terry in it. And with all that knowledge, in 2 weeks, I think it's after Labor Day, we will be having a new gardener, somebody who watched her grandmother garden, but didn't actually learn from her. But then once she grew up, she decided to garden, and boy, did she gardening. And she's a wonderful photographer. She's new here in Lexington. And I went over to see it. I was most impressed. And she's coming to talk to us about going from grandmother to the internet to learn how to grow her garden. So it's
Actually, it's actually September 1st, so next week.
Oh, it's next week.
Yes,
Okay,
sorry.
No, that's all right. Okay. Oh, do I see one more question here? Maybe it's the 2 more questions. Here are the roses. Oh, awesome. Thank you for these presentations. Okay, another. I have a general question about a plant. I have black-eyed Susans that come up every year and grow about 3 or 4 feet tall. I see many of these flowers around Lexington, and they are a lot shorter. Is it my variety that makes my plant so tall, or should I be cutting it back before it blooms?
It's the variety.
But I do find that if you cut things back, like I cut back my Joe Pie, which will grow to 8 feet if I let it go, and my husband hates it. But if I cut it back early in June and then I cut it back on July 4th, it's a more reasonable 4 feet. So you can try cutting back and seeing what happens with yours. I do that also with my phlox, which gets too tall.
There's many varieties of the Rebecca, the black-eyed Susan, and they come in different shades. I have 2 growing next to each other, and it's amazing to see how different they are. So I always encourage people trying different varieties of the same species, and you know, just to see how they grow differently and what you like better and what's more manageable. So it's kind of fun, not sticking to the standard.
Yeah, I agree with that. And she says, thank you. I've been afraid the black-eyed Susans would not bloom if I cut back. I will have to tell you a quick story on that. I like Tithonia. Tithonia is an annual. It attracts hummingbirds like crazy. It's beautiful. I planted it once. It was a reasonable size. I planted it a second time and it grew to about 12 feet.
Wow.
It was just enormous. I wrote burpees to complain. I really didn't want a 12-foot annual. I mean, and when the winds came and the hurricanes came, of course, when it fell, it was like a tree toppling all over my garden. You know, you got to watch them. So if you see something growing too tall, I would take a trim, trim it. And whatever you do, somebody asked me yesterday about butterfly bushes. Deadhead. Deadheading is really important. You'll have more flowers if you deadhead as you go. You keep deadheading those Stelladora lilies, they'll keep growing and blooming for you. Same with the butterfly bush.
Can
Meanwhile, yeah, go ahead.
I add something about the butterfly bush? Towards the end of the season, I stopped deadheading because in the winter, when the snow comes and you have those seed heads on the butterfly bush, they're covered with snow. So it's like having white flowers in winter.
Oh, I had never thought of that. Attractive idea.
Yeah.
As opposed to being the clean, deadheading it all off and so forth. I thank you very much for coming, everybody. Oh, wait a minute. Are there any plants you totally avoid? Oh, yeah, there are a few I avoid.
Yes, there are, but I don't know if they would be in the weed category. One plant that there's a lot of plants I avoid actually, but one plant that I would never plant ever again is it's called the chameleon plant. I forget the Latin name, but once you put that in your garden, you can never get rid of it. It turns green, red, in like white foliage. That's one of them. I've been pulling up plants too that have a lot of boring green foliage and not very showy flowers. So off the top of my head, I can't think of something, but I'll go through the garden and I'll say, why am I growing this? You know, here's all this greenery and it has this insignificant white spray and it only blooms for a week. It's taking up too much space. So it's just sort of like doing housekeeping, you know, it's like cleaning out your closet. You know, what don't I wear? What don't I like? Why am I keeping it? You know,
yeah.
It's creating value.
Just getting rid of it.
Yeah.
I've planted white loosestrife for a while and then took it out because it was invasive.
Yeah.
And yet I have a neighbor who's growing purple loosestrife, which really is considered invasive and you really shouldn't do it. And I keep thinking, well, please take that out. I'm afraid it'll come to my yard.
Yeah.
I think it's the invasive plants that I worry about the most.
Yeah.
Is how to get rid of them because they can, at the moment I am fighting fall ageratum, which somebody gave me. And I thought, oh, how nice to have a fall purple plant. It is spreading all over the place. It needs to be ripped out once it blooms because I'm going to live with it forever.
Yeah.
There are all sorts of questions. These films will be on at the library and you can see them there. You always write into the garden club and there's a Facebook there and you have more questions. We're around. Okay, everybody have a good weekend. Take care and thank you, Terry, once again.
You're welcome.
Great to have you on.
Thank you everyone for attending and thank you, Ashley and Terry.